Hello, dear friends. What a blessing to be with you today. Here we are for another study of one of the articles of the Spiritist magazine. Here we are today. When this first airs, we would be mid to late April of 2022. And this week we celebrate Earth's Day, our beautiful Mother Earth, this planet where you and I find ourselves in, that created and cared for by Jesus and the superior spirits, has embraced us in this lifetime and perhaps many other lifetimes we've lived before. Make sure it's in focus because we are live. So today we're going to be talking about the Spiritist conduct regarding nature. And this is something that the Spiritist magazine brings to you from the book Spiritist Conduct. Each and every issue has one of the chapters of the book. The book is translated, but it's not yet published in English. So we bring it to us for our awareness and most importantly, so that we can practice those tips, tricks, advice, guidelines in our daily lives, because that's what matters, is that we will be applying this in our lives. Shall we? So today's article is from issue 51 of the Spiritist magazine, published in October of 2020. Another thing about the Spiritist doctrine and its teachings is that you and I know those teachings from the superior spirits are timeless. The Spiritist conduct, the conduct of the Spiritist towards nature, is the same 2,000 years ago as it will be 2,000 years from today. In the preface of this book, which I believe is in a different, issue of the magazine, because this book was published in 1960 in Portuguese, and we are yet to have it in English today. He says here, to embrace Spiritism, and this is a preface from Emmanuel, received by the medium Chico Xavier, although the book is from the medium Waldo Vieira. He says, to embrace Spiritism, it will be asked of us at each step orientation towards the attitude, orientation for our attitudes towards life. Thinking about this, Sandra Luiz traced some norms or some rules that constitute the epitome of our conduct. So how do we are supposed to be conducting ourselves as we go about this day? Goes hand in hand with the many other things that Andrea Luiz has brought to us. For example, the book Green Light that we are studying on Thursday mornings. And I say we, myself here at the Spiritual Society of Richmond, in collaboration with Kardec Radio on Thursday mornings. So let's see what Emmanuel has to say towards our conduct regarding nature. Remind everybody, say hi, leave your comments, share, so that others can benefit as well. And when we visit spiritistmagazine.org, you can download the PDF version of the magazine. That's what you're going to see shortly on the screen. That's what I use. And then you can also download the app for your phones. I've showed how to have all of the issues of the Spiritist magazine free of charge. And you can always write to us at spiritistmagazine@gmail.com. If you'd like to volunteer, if you have questions or comments for the editor as well. So this is the beautiful cover of the magazine that talks about many other things regarding the pandemic. And this is the article you and I will look at This is the PDF version, and I use it so that it's very simple, very humble, no special effects, so that we can just study together. You can do the same at your Spiritist group, at home, so on and so forth, because you can download it to your tablet as well. There you go. He says, with a grateful and serene soul, bless the nature that embraces you, protecting, whenever possible, all beings and things in the region you live. Nature co-substantiates the sanctuary in which God's wisdoms make itself visible. So let's think about this article. We'll probably not address every single every single paragraph. But we'll focus on a few of them for our reflection, because I want to invite you to go and read the article. How grateful and serene is your soul right now? Because what we have is today, this moment of gratefulness and serene attitude. Gratefulness for all of nature surrounding us, from the backyard birds to the trees, to the sky, to the rain, to the sun, which provides life on the earth. I know the sun is not part of earth. And what are the things that we are doing to protect those beings around us? Because the nature, earth is an infinite planet with its resources. And as we live and go through this physical existence, we use things such as the computer, the camera, the microphone I'm using. All of those things are resources that someone used to create the things that I'm using right now. So I need to protect it. I didn't create the elements that came. That's for the co-creators in a higher plane. God creates what you see in the universe, and we, as co-creators in a lesser plane and on a greater plane, as Andrea Luiz brings in the book Evolution to Worlds, we mold, we transform, we change things around us, but ultimately came from the earth itself. I didn't go mine what was needed to create these issues. And you, perhaps you were, well, we are contributing to the betterment of society in a different way. God's wisdoms make itself visible through creation. That's also in the first chapter of the Spirit's book, where the Spirits tell us what is the proof of the existence of God. And they say, look around, look what's around us. We need to think about how my actions affect all of the beings and things around myself that Andrea Luiz is saying that I need to protect. Am I living in a way that is respectful, reverent, and grateful to the earth that is allowing you and I to have this physical experience today? Good question. And he will continue. He says, preserve the purity of the springs and the fertility of the soil, right? The springs, because we need water for this existence of the physical body on the earth, and the fertility of the soil that give us the nutrition, the plants for us to nourish ourselves. Helping in the fields guarantees the bread. A soil that is poor cannot give us the wheat that we make the bread, or the other flours that makes the bread. We need the yeast to grow the bread. He says, cooperate spontaneously towards the raising of orchards to help with the planting of trees and reforestation. The plant kingdom is the protective edging of human life. What a blessing to have the human kingdom. So are you cooperating to the raising of orchards? Maybe you don't have a peach tree, an apple tree around you, but we can have in our homes, in our backyards, raised gardens. We can plant more um, sustainable landscaping features that will attract more of the animals, the insects, the pollinators, because that is what's going to give us the nourishment around us, to see the nature, the abundance, and the diversity of life forms on the earth as well. So I hope that this feels inspired you to volunteer. Maybe you live in an apartment and that you can do a pot gardening situation, or maybe there's a community garden you can volunteer in. There's a lot of things we can do in a smaller scale that will help the health of the planet during this moment of transition. Not only the planetary transition, as in Spiritism we understand, from a world of trials and expiations to a world of regeneration, but also our role in the climate change, in the changings of the resources around us, so we can help the health of the soil, drainage. We can produce food in our backyards. We can help start a community garden in a neighborhood that is less affluent than the one we live in, for example. Many cities have those programs, because the plant kingdom is the protective edging of human life. When we read, this is such a beautiful, all-encompassing with the other works of Andrea Luiz. So in the book Evolution into Worlds, we learn the evolution of the spiritual principle, and then the throughout the kingdoms, and then in the human kingdom, as I bless nature and I also respond to the pollen around us. When this first comes on, will be full-blown spring. We're here in Central Virginia where I live. It's beautiful. And then when we look at that evolution, how much more reverence we take from the plants, because we know then that memory of those reactions, of those enzymatic processes, of being a multicellular, multi-complex organism, it's what serves us today, when we automatically can do all the things that the trillions of cells in both realms, the spiritual, paraspiritual body, and the physical body, plus all the microbes that live on our skin and our gut as well. That's symbiosis. So it's so beautiful. When we read, for example, I'll bring one book, Nosso Lar, and you read the story of Nosso Lar and all the other books on the life in the spirit world by Andrea Luiz, which Evolution into Worlds is one of them, for example, you see the care that the inhabitants of Nosso Lar have for the gardens, and having the flowers, and having these beautiful places, the fields where there's music, and places for us to enjoy. On the earth, science shows that more plants, more beauty, lower stress, lower the temperature of the cities, allow for people to have a more holistic, whole health life, where it's not just concrete, it's actually nature, even if it's just our backyard nature as well. Isn't that beautiful, dear friends? This is how we, he's talking about wastefulness, how much we are using and how much should we be using, and that's something for each and every one of us to work at. He says, immunize yourself against the destruction and wastefulness of the richness of the soil through abusive explorations, be it through the burning of the fields, unordered raising of generous trees, or the use of explosives in fishing. That's some examples of 1960, right? Respect towards creation is simply our duty. It's our duty to know of those beings, to look here, the plant kingdom, protect whenever possible all the beings and things where you live. Think about the effects of what we do, and our actions leading to pollution, destruction, and wastefulness. How much more do we need to have? Because sometimes the having and the consumerism we live in leads us towards more, bigger, better. But sometimes we have enough. If you make more than $40,000 a year, you are like within the 10% of humanity that is wealthy. Many human beings on the earth don't have as much as we have. So let's fight the impulse of more. Because sometimes it makes us feel safe and have comfort, but it's also contributing to the exploitation of nature around us. He says, utilize the treasure of plants and flowers in the decoration of common areas, using irrigation and composting for their needed preservation. And let's think about we can have the flowers and the plants without cutting them, without removing them from where we are. We can plant, as I said, we can use methods of having this beautiful landscaping that includes native plants of your area. You can irrigate them and use composting, and then they are preserved and they produce beauty and treasure as well. He says, help the plants express the gratitude of those who receive their benefits. We are benefited by the plants, by their beauty, by their surroundings. In the book Workers of Life Eternal, is it Workers of Life Eternal? Or Missionaries of the Light, I mean Missionaries of the Light, when they talk about the reincarnation of Sigismundo, they describe how as an aside to get to the treasure of the gratefulness of nature. They describe how Sigismundo is prepared, and around the couple that will conceive a child, and Sigismundo will be that child, and the whole background and behind the scenes of that family dynamics and why he needs to reincarnate and why they are unable to conceive at the time and what the spirits work hard to accomplish. But once Rachel, which is the female in that couple, the one of the people in that couple, when she gets pregnant, they close off her room for the protection of that pregnancy, the blessedness of the pregnancy. And then they take her to a field where she's sleeping. And then they, under Luiz, describe spirits removing therapeutic agents from the flowers in the spiritual realm and the physical realm, bottling them and giving them so that they can nourish her. And we can do that as well in this life. I'm going to skip one part where we talked about preservation, because this is the part that I want to get to. In that scene, you see this. He says, apply the natural forces as therapeutic agents in the curing of various disease. The pure magnetism of the countryside and beaches, fresh air, medicinal waters. All pharmacological agents come from the reservoirs of nature. That's what we're thinking about. When a lot of the things that you and I today go to the pharmacy to get a pill comes first from plants. Then we produce it in factories. But a lot of what we can notice is the indigenous people, the native inhabitants of the land where we live, the ones who are closer to nature, know of the knowledge of what the plants do. And then the scientists go in and use that and study that and make sure it's safe and bring it to us. So even when we take a few days to be in nature, to hike a trail, to walk, to spend time in a park daily, that in and of itself has therapeutic agents that can help you and I in this life with the ailments that we have. And when everybody knows when you're on the beach, you feel good. There's this magnetism of the countryside that is untouched by the activity of humans as we think of our activities or cities, and you can think about when you're in a big city. There's nothing wrong against big cities, but you can think about how many people are there, the spiritual companions, our spiritual companions. Let's put ourselves in the mix. The emanating thoughts, how we're feeling, the things we do, all of that affects. We're all affecting one another. That's in the book Thought and Life Association, where Emmanuel says, the chapter association, and we're the product of thousands and millions of minds, and millions of minds are the products of one another. So we constantly interact. When we go to a place that is less populated, then less of that. And the books of André Luiz clearly show that the spirits take those who are recently discarnated or suffering to beaches, to the countryside, to wait for the continuation of the trip, so they can go to the hospital, to the outpost, to the colonies as well. And he says, stay away from criminally selling the resources of nature found in the stretches of land that are responsible for, which goes hand in hand with refraining from retaining land without cultivation or elevated purposes, such as preserving the natural habitat and the animals and the ecosystem of the area. Because when we disdain the resources of the land, we misappropriate the favors of the Father. So the question is, what are the talents you have? What are things you received, and how are we using it? And last but not least, he says, we are all God's collaborators. That is found in Paul, the first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 3, verse 9. And as I mentioned in the beginning, this book was published and translated, it's published in Portuguese, it's translated, and we're waiting its publication in English. But in the meantime, you can read the issues of the Spiritist magazine. Each issue has one of the chapters of this book. Amazing, beautiful book for you and I to study, read, contemplate, meditate, and use as a very practical set of instructions for our daily lives. Remember, you can visit spiritistmagazine.org. You can have all the resources there free of charge. You can even order a physical copy of the Spiritist magazine if that's what you wish to do. You can always write to us at spiritistmagazine@gmail.com. Dear friends, between now and the next time we meet, I hope that you can stay well. I hope that you can stay safe, that you can take care of someone else as well as yourself. And I will see you next time, God willing. Have a great